Tuesday night, and yes, it's a brand new setup intro only because if you're going to be the best, you got to bring on the best. And David Murphy, it doesn't get any better with Murph. So, as I see Murph giggling in the green room there, but he is back on with us tonight. Of course, the last time we talked to Murph was when he had just retired. So, we get caught up with everything that Murph has been up to. And it's always a great time to spend with him here. And you guys, I also thank you for tuning in on AMP Radio. That's one of three ways to get on. Also, obviously on Sports Radio 102.9 FM, The Game, and then here live with us on broadcastsouth.com. So we appreciate everyone from overseas and all around the world for tuning in with us tonight. And yes, my co-host Ryan is on tonight. And you guys, I'm going to start playing the Guess What He's Wearing segment because I think everyone needs to start finding out what Ryan is wearing, and you guys will be completely surprised on what he's wearing. And if you're listening on the radio, then go back to broadcastsouth.com, watch the live replay, and you'll find out exactly what he has on. But we'll try to paint the picture as much as possible. But the Phillies are starting to bounce back. Unfortunately lost, but we'll see what happens. Bryce Harper, though, returning after 159 days of Tommy John surgery. So as I said to Murph, he is the TO of the Eagles, but for the Phillies. And so we'll get into some Phillies talk. Obviously, the Eagles, I believe, were the extreme winners when it came to the draft. And, oh, by the way, someone did steal a win last night, and that would be your Philadelphia hometown 76ers. As Maxey, right place, right time, Boston trying to do too much. And I also found out, speaking of Boston, someone is an actual Boston fan. So we'll get into that as well here on the other side. But nonetheless, we thank you for tuning in here on a Tuesday night, as Thursday night we may end up skipping. So you guys end up tuning in. It could be either later on that evening, but at 7 o'clock, 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and it's going to be the new show over on No Filter Network, myself and Joe Manuel, the East Coast, West Coast sports show. So join us over there on the No Filter Network. You can go right through BroadStreetSouth.com, click on the live show, get your free ticket, and be there on Thursday night. So lots going on. Still a lot more announcements coming. So just hang on, as always, as the network continues to grow. But with that all being said, once again, we thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm Angel Martinez. This is episode 185 with the legendary David Murphy, also known as Murph. And we'll see you right on the other side. Now, as I talk about guess the shirt, imagine that. It is the co-host with the most, I guess, at this point. It is Ryan. I don't know what jersey, shirt, / whatever. Neff. Ryan, thank you for joining me tonight.
I'm Ryan Neff. It's great to be with you this evening. Great to have Murph on. Within the last hour, Joel Embiid is the NBA MVP. This is the Stoke City Football Club shirt. Started watching the Premier League about 11 years ago. They were in the league at the time. They were a tough and gritty team. I just started rooting for them. They're buried in the league below the Premier League right now, trying to work their way back up. Last 7 years hasn't worked out, but all kinds of stuff to talk about. Phillies seem to be gaining a little bit of momentum. Bryce Harper back. You know, Sixers take one from my Celtics yesterday. So a lot to talk about, my man.
Again, folks, you heard it here tonight. Again, the Celtics fans. So KC, what a coincidence. Celtics, what a coincidence. But that's okay. He gave us the actual story behind it. So I can't hold him for it. There's some history behind there. And as long as he's not a Devils fan, we're all fine because we know how that turned out last night with Jersey. But nonetheless, it is what we call the legend around these parts. It is Murph, the other Murph from Philly. But it's David Murphy, formerly of obviously 6ABC Philly, our meteorologist, famous meteorologist in Philly. Love absolutely having him on the air. We've missed him since he's been off air. And Murph, so from what I hear is you really are enjoying retirement life.
Yeah, retirement's great. It's been just a joyride. And of course, Angel, you and I were talking about before we went on the air about how last year I retired right at the end of 2 seasons ago, but last season part of my plan was to get a second season ticket plan, so I've got like 30 games total. Well, it was perfect because then the Phillies at the tail end of the season make the playoffs. They go all the way to the World Series, and because I bought that second package, I was able to get into all the games, got my kids in, and my wife went to a couple and was like this the whole time. She's like, can't stand tension, and I was like, World Series and the playoffs is tension. That's absolutely true. And some friends of mine got to go and stuff too. So it was like perfect timing. It was like the heavens were speaking to me and saying, "Good job, you retired. Here's a World Series for you."
Yeah, it's true. What it would have been better, Murph, if you actually would have had the ring to go with the retirement. One from 6ABC and then one from the Phillies. It would have just made the icing on the cake. So it would have been great. And Rick Marcus, great friend of the show, he says here that from his Celtics, what's his Bruins? Who choked to Florida too?
Not a
Yeah,
Bruins fan.
yeah. But yeah, speaking of, and we'll get into that as well because obviously Boston. This is so Ryan, him and I will go back during the whatever sports that we're watching that night. Of course, he teased me about a Tampa Bay Lightning. Once again, he was right. So I'll tell everyone on air that he was as much as he teased me through the text messages. But Ryan, the one thing that you did say, and I'm starting to believe it, is the trophy from the President's Trophy apparently seems to be a big curse.
The last 10 President's Trophy winners have not won the Stanley Cup, which is mind-boggling to me. It really is. The Bruins should have never struggled with the Panthers, although the Panthers did give them a rough time during the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a season like that, and it's just, for me, it's one of the biggest upsets in, Stanley Cup playoff history. I know the Lightning got knocked out a couple years ago, but when you set the record for wins and points and you fall flat on your face in the first round, wow, that's all I can say.
That's
I'm
true.
almost glad you weren't there for that, like in the building, because at the end of the game, I mean, the looks on those Boston fans, I mean, they just couldn't believe it. It's like they'd all been hit by a truck.
Yeah. Well, because again, listen, and we all know there's not much of love hate in Philly, not at all for Boston fans, not even including the Patriots, who I believe were the worst in the NFL draft. But you got to look at it. The Tampa Bay Lightning did it 3 seasons ago, ended up having the best record in the NHL, got eliminated in the first round, not only eliminated, but completely swept out 4-0. And then you take on Toronto, which I thought they were going to end up doing at least fairly well against Toronto, but they looked gassed out and there was nothing they can do at that point. But yeah, Boston fans, I mean, for 65 wins for the season, went on a roll and seemed like they may be the ones winning the NHL, the Stanley Cup, but they did it. And then you look at Colorado. Colorado just happened to catch lightning in a bottle last season because they too are out by the Krakens. So I've made this debate, Murph, and I don't think I've ever spoken to you about this one, but so obviously when the NHL creates an expansion team, then you get the pick of the litter because you get the best of the best. Now, I think it should be one of those things that you should have to get yourself to that point. Like you figured, but Las Vegas was one of the first teams from the expansion league that obviously put themselves a crazy run to go to the Stanley Cup the first year in. Didn't win it, but they were still able to get there. Then you get Seattle, that comes in. Again, gets great picks. Not saying they're going to go to the Stanley Cup, but at this point, they are advancing to round 2. So do you feel, I guess, any different that it should be where the NHL shouldn't allow you to get basically, the way I look at it, is number 1 picks for your expansion team? Or it's just one of those things that, again, as fans, we just have to deal with?
I mean, it's kind of like the new rules in baseball to me. They're going to do what they're going to do. So
Yeah.
I may not like it. I may like it, but I just kind of sit back and just take what comes. I suppose the fans in Seattle would feel differently. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I know what you mean. It does feel, especially as we're talking about all these, established teams that had great years and now are getting plunked out by some of these upstarts. I mean, there's some logic to that. I think, yeah, to that argument that maybe those fans ought to have to wait through a little bit of a buildup.
Yeah. And well, Ryan, go ahead.
I don't. I mean, I don't mind it. I like to see parity. Um, it just proves to me once again that the NHL playoffs are the best playoffs in the world. You don't know what's going to happen. Throw the regular season records out. I mean, it doesn't mean anything for a team like Boston to get knocked out like that. It doesn't make any sense to me. And Murph might attest to this. When you're going through the regular season and you're playing Toronto on one day and the next day it's Detroit, you're not playing anybody in succession except for a home and home.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get into the playoffs and you got to face a team 7 times, possibly, it's a whole completely different ball game. It's different than the NFL. NFL, one playoff game, get to the next round. The NBA playoffs are sort of the same thing, but the NHL, I've been watching it 30, 40 years, and there's just too much unpredictability. And for a team like Seattle to do what they're doing, I love it. Yeah, take out the Avalanche. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with it because obviously they took out the Lightning last year. Speed, though, speed was on Colorado's side last season, especially when Tampa went up to Colorado. And I think, not for nothing, but I think when it came down to the Lightning, and obviously for Vasilevsky, I think he couldn't recover from that onslaught that he had. I think it was either game one or game two where they had the 6 goals basically right in a row. And it just seemed like he wasn't able to be himself come this season going into the postseason. The good thing is for all the Lightning fans and the players is that you get those 2 additional months of break that you didn't get because you ran into the Stanley Cup for 3 years in a row. So we're trying to make it a fourth. Obviously they didn't. But on the flip side, Flyers fans, if you ever get your act together, it would be nice to see that you can keep your name on Lord Stanley because I'm almost certain it's next year that the Flyers will have nothing to do with the NHL because their name will be scratched off because of the names that continue to go around down to Lord Stanley there. So I don't know, Murph. I don't know what the Flyers are going to do. I don't see it. I just don't believe that this organization is doing everything they possibly can. And God bless John Tortorella, because I don't know. I don't know how he does it. I just don't know.
Well, the guy they drafted last year, who I guess is playing up in Boston, is he looks like he might be the real deal, but I guess he still needs seasoning. Um, it looked like they might have gotten a couple of pieces in the draft this year, but yeah, that's been a hard team to watch for a while now. But it's funny because you're talking about how these upstart teams like the Kraken out in Seattle, and some of these newer teams are suddenly like coming into the playoffs, and teams are winning that aren't supposed to win. To your point, I think Ryan, if the Flyers could get into the playoffs, you never know. They might in a 4 or 5 straight games. Just if you get a little momentum, you come out and you see those same faces on the other side of the ice game after game. You might just mentally feel like you've got an edge, particularly if you get off to a good start. And the Flyers, they got to get into the playoffs to see if that can happen. But hockey is so strange that if they could just add a couple of more pieces, get a little more skill. Who knows what can happen if they finally get in. But I'm with you. I don't have a lot of faith that in the direction it's going right now. We'll see what happens when these new picks get on board.
I mean, I think you have to give Tortorella another year to implement a system, and they need to get away from the stigma of the old Broad Street bullies. I mean, it's going on 50 years now almost, and they just need to get away from that and give Tortorella a little time. He's a great coach. Let him get his own players in there. Let him implement his system. This year was a year to forget. All Flyers
like every year.
In the last 4, 5, 6 years, it's been seasons to forget. But they need a new direction. They got the GM stepped down, or he got let go. So bring some fresh ideas in and see what happens, because they're like one of the mainstays from the past. When Philadelphia does well, it makes the NHL better, and it makes the playoffs better when they're in them.
Yeah.
Well, they only have one more season to put it together because John only signed up for 2 years. So he's coming into year 2, and he basically said he's doing 2 years, and that's it. He's going, away into the NHL sunset forever and I don't blame him. Again, he didn't have to come back if he didn't want to. He could always end up joining, the guys on ESPN and be just fine for the rest of his life. But I just think it's. I wish I could say I completely would believe in the Flyers, but I just haven't. And not saying that I'm completely disconnected from the Flyers. It's just that once they decide to get their act together, it would be great to see Flyers hockey the way we've known it, the way we've loved to see it before. And it may happen. Who knows? Maybe this year they'll finally flip the script. I think that they get rid of Gritty. Maybe they'll have an actual team, because that's their main, that's their goalie, that's their forward. I could go on forever, but it's all right. But Rick Marcus here. He says, I will try and stay up and watch Harbor tonight on MLB app. Hopefully tonight will go much better than last night. Dave Wallencheck from Redline Radio LLC and over from Steel City Renegades. Dave, what's going on? Appreciate you tuning in, my friend. It's always good when when the cross shows come in, and those guys do a phenomenal job. If you guys get the opportunity, watch Steel City Renegades coming up this September. I'll be part of that cast over there. We have a ton of fun, and those guys let you know exactly the way things are. And in case you're joining us right now, 15 after the hour, if you join us over on Sports Radio 102.9 FM, the game with us tonight, David Murphy, former meteorologist over from 6 ABC Philadelphia, and then there's Ryan that you guys already know with the 1,000 different jerseys. So, and by the way, for those listening on the radio, he is wearing a football jersey, as it's known on the English side of the house. So, yeah, there's that. But anyways, so the Phillies, Murph, we saw last year, Phillies ended up making a run that no one saw coming. Obviously, none of us did. I mean, every year we hear from managers, and obviously it started with a complete different manager from what it ended with. But we hear every year that's the ultimate goal for any team in any league. We hear that, we're planning on making the World Series run. We're planning on making, getting to the Super Bowl. But the Phillies, I think maybe the same way, caught that lightning in a bottle and almost end up doing it. A couple of games from the Astros, I question from some of the hijinks that went on. But then again, I know, Ryan, you can shake your head if you want to, but there was just certain things that I just didn't agree upon. But it is the game. Phillies had plenty of opportunities, obviously, put the bats together. But this year, a very cold start to the season. We know there's some injuries, obviously, plaguing this team. But they finally get to 500, a little over 500, by at least winning the series in Houston and not starting off the way they wanted to on last night. But what do you make of so far early on in this campaign for 2023 for the Phillies?
Well, first of all, I don't want to act like Nostradamus, but I called that 1-5 start. I just didn't see us doing well against two pretty good American League teams. And honestly, I had picked the Phillies this year to do about 83 wins and miss the playoffs. And it's not because I don't love the Phillies. I do. I probably love them more than anybody else I know. Well, I can't say that because I know a couple of fanatics. But and the reason was because I didn't think they had done enough depth on the starting pitching side. I love the bullpen. I think the bullpen's way better. We don't have to look at Juris Familia anymore, or Norwood, or some of these guys who just didn't have it at the beginning of last year. And as much as I like Craig or Knable too, he just didn't quite have it in that closer's role. But the problem is, if you don't have starting pitching going deeper into games, that great bullpen of yours is going to get overused, and you're going to have situations like Andrew Bellotti going on the 15-day, IL. However, they've started to look a lot better, and the offense has been better than I thought it would be, given that we were without Hoskins, and then Derek Hall goes out, and you were thinking you were going to be without Harper until maybe June or July. Of course, that's all changing as of tonight. And now I'm getting a little bit more optimistic. Also, remember that last year, a little further down the road than we are right now in the season, we were 21-29 before we turned it all around. Well, we're 15-15 now, and I think the Dodgers are beatable, and we probably take at least one of the next two games. I'm feeling rather optimistic that they actually may get back to about where they were last year. And if Harper catches fire, which, by the way, I don't think is going to happen right away. I think we're watching Harper in spring training for the next few weeks. Although, knowing him, how much you want to bet like his second at bat tonight? Boom, over the wall just because he's Harper. But I am feeling optimistic because Harper's back sooner. And these young kids, Stott, Marsh, and Bohm, they've just been playing out of their minds. And Castellanos looks like he's back. With that kind of dynamic, I mean, any time you go through a baseball season, you're going to have some guys in the lineup who aren't hitting, others who are. What you don't want is to have nobody hitting, which was what happens a lot on bad teams. This team just seems so good offensively that four of the guys any given night can carry the team, and then the next night it could be four others. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the 15-15 start, particularly after the 5-10 start.
Yeah.
And, and I'm feeling like with Harper back and so many guys hitting so well, and you're starting to see signs that Nola and Wheeler now want to go later into games, and Suarez will be back soon. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I got a question for you though.
Sure.
And Suarez comes back. Who's your number 5 pitcher? Do you put the guy going tonight, Stram, back in the bullpen, which makes the bullpen stronger? Or have you seen enough of Bailey Falter and you just keep Stram in the rotation?
I think you just keep scrambling the rotation because at this point, I mean, to save I guess, early phase for the Phillies. I think I would just keep the rotation going the way it's going right now because you have to. I mean, our middle relievers, if they even call them that anymore, the long relievers, but
Yeah.
it's something that the Phillies have been struggling with for the past couple of seasons. They did it last year. This year, it seems to be a little bit better, but I would just kind of keep the rotation the way it's going right now. I think it'd be more successful for the Phillies.
With all that being said, Murph, I want you to put your meteorologist hat on. After the first month of the season, are the Phillies partly cloudy, partly sunny,
Jeez.
mostly cloudy, or mostly sunny?
Well, I never said partly cloudy on the air. I always said clouds and sun or sun and clouds. And if I said sun first, it was better. I'm going to go sun and clouds for the Phils, but I'm going to say there's going to be a lot of days that are mostly sunny. I'm feeling pretty darn good about this team, better than I did coming out of spring training.
Yeah, well, and the one thing now, as much as again, now I do tease Ryan a whole bunch. I mean, he's taken, Lord knows, he's taken a lot from us throughout the last 3 years or so. But to flip it really quick, and I know my producers listening over at Studio B, so I have to kind of lightly tread when it comes to the White Sox as we get there in a second. But when it comes to the Pirates, it's funny because I will say to Ryan, every single year, he starts out, the big running joke is if the Pirates win their first game, there's like, oh, there's win number one, and then he'll call a bunch of losses for the remainder of the season. But so they go 1-161, and it's been the longest running joke. And then as we got the baseball season started, Ryan said the same thing. Pittsburgh ended up winning the first game, same identical thing. Now the irony is, who would have thought? Now going into day number 2 into May, that the Pirates still retain the best record in Major League Baseball. So I don't know what they did. And Ryan, maybe you have some insight there over at PNC Park, but can you point your finger exactly what went right for so far early on for the Pirates?
I mean, I just, if they don't sell off everybody like they normally do to other teams, it's just a young, gritty team. I mean, McCutcheon's back. He's obviously the leader in the clubhouse. The pitching has been solid. They've been hitting really well. What I want to see is it sustainable? Because we've seen with other teams, they got out to a hot start, then they start to fall off a little bit, then they can never recover it. Just like the Mets, like the last couple of years, gangbusters for like the first 4 months, and then all of a sudden they just go into the tank. Yeah. So I just want to see where they're at in June, late June, early July, and then maybe I'll start to get excited a little bit because, and it, just like with hockey, we saw what happened with the Bruins. Anything could happen. Injury here, injury there. Something happens, they tail off. So, but right now, I'm enjoying it. So,
hindsight is 20/20. But if you had looked at all of the teams that you thought were not going to be super great this year, and the A's obviously are there, and the Royals and the Reds. Reds have actually done better than I thought they would. And you would have probably put the Pirates in that group. But then if you had said, which of those teams has the best chance of jumping out and making an advance, kind of like the Orioles did last year. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I might have picked the Pirates. It's the only thing that was kind of hesitant in my mind. Two things happened. First, that whole issue where Brian Reynolds wanted to be traded in spring training, and the Pirates never sign anybody like that, so they'll probably lose him. And then the second thing, shortly after the season started, was O'Neal Cruz going down, who was a raw talent, but I think is ultimately going to be a really good player for them. I don't know if he sticks at his current position, but I mean, he's good. And I thought, geez, that's just too bad for the Pirates. Well, they signed Reynolds, mm-hmm. and now Ke'Bryan Hayes, he's signed. They look like they might not only be turning the corner talent-wise, but maybe attitude-wise and mentality-wise in the front office. I don't know. I'm excited. I love that ballpark. I love the city. I think they're great people and great fans out there. And as long as the Pirates don't go 6-0 against the Phillies, I'm all into it.
Yeah. You and I both, as Rick Marcus gives us the update here, the Tampa Bay Rays, again, one of the other surprising teams here in Major League Baseball. Right now, 3-1 over Ryan's Pirates there for the moment. But again, Kevin Cash, and Ryan and I have talked about this. Kevin Cash, Murph, I mean, the guy, one of the lowest paid managers in Major League Baseball, one of the lowest payrolls ever. I mean, the only ones that have a lower payroll is obviously the A's, and they're getting ready to hightail it out to Vegas. but
Yeah.
one of the lowest payrolls. And somehow or another, Kevin Cash, year after year since he's been here, has been able to get these guys on the winning side. Now, again, starting out the way they did right out of the gates, no one saw it coming. We went to, and this is where I'll introduce the Chicago White Sox, because we ended up going to the game on Saturday. Friday night, they end up losing in the ninth. Saturday we're there. They end up losing again in the ninth, the Chicago White Sox. But the Rays have been able to just make things happen, even with all the turmoil going on down here in the Tampa Bay area, because St. Petersburg's mayor keeps saying, no, we're going to keep them here in St. Pete, and everything's going to be hunky dory and it's going to be fine. Then Mayor Jane Castro was like, well, how about if we bring them over to Ybor City, which then the fans from like Lakeland, Orlando would actually make the trip because they will be right at the end of I-4 and 75, which will make the most amount of sense. So until that saga plays completely out, I hope everybody enjoys Tropicana Field, one of the weirdest fields I've ever been to, but I absolutely love it because it's so freaking quirky and ridiculous. But, again, the White Sox, the reason why I bring them up is because, well, we started with last year with our former manager with the White Sox. So you let go of a manager probably that should have not ever come out of retirement. To then you go with a safe hire. And the White Sox, other than the A's, I think might be one of the most embarrassing teams in Major League Baseball. It is early still, but I mean, for what the White Sox have not been doing, and they've been getting clobbered. It's not like they're losing by 2 runs, 1 run. Some games have been down as much as 11 runs by the end of the game. So, we talk about the Phillies and their success when you have other teams, and Chicago is a major market. So I'm kind of surprised the way the White Sox have really slumped, thinking that obviously we got rid of one issue, but now they've created another one because these safe hires, you just can't do it in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's been a bad start for them. I I think they'll probably ultimately play better on average than they have so far. But it's bad when, like on May 1st yesterday, you've already got fans saying, "Well, who are they going to trade at the deadline?" I mean,
Yeah.
it's a month into this, and you're already talking that way. But I feel like that team's got. I think the problem is they don't have enough depth, and there's nothing coming from the farm really. Um, but there's talent on that team, and I'm surprised they've been as bad as they have. And I almost wonder if it isn't getting to the point where it's just in the players' heads.
Yeah, and it could be, but again, it's just a shame. I mean, it's a great atmosphere in Chicago. Obviously, the Bears now are going to move to the suburbs, which Lori Lightfoot went bananas because she said, "Well, we have a locked in deal, I think, until like 2027 or something like that." And they just, no offense, I mean, you built a spaceship, what's known as Soldier Field, and it's not feasible for fans to actually go there and just enjoy the game. So they got a much better lot out in the suburbs, and my producer was telling me all about it as far as like where the location is going to be. The trains it's just like if you're going down to Lincoln Financial Field where the train's going to be right there. It would help out with the traffic. I mean, overall, it just makes a lot of sense. And God bless, because the Bears are trying to do the best they possibly can do to keep the fan base in the Chicago area, because we've known for the past couple of seasons they just haven't done much of anything. So, it's tough. It's tough when you're an owner of a team to figure out what you want to end up doing. I still believe, like down or up in Jacksonville, I should say, that they're probably going to end up hightailing to London. If you get the first opportunity, become the London Jaguars. I mean, they're the only team that's played the max amount of games over in London. According to the owner, he wants to keep everybody here in Jacksonville. I don't see it because now they're talking about trying to get a brand new venue
I want to see
for
it.
Jacksonville. And if you're going to do it, you might have to do a dome, because even though, yes, you can host, you can host a Super Bowl down here. You really don't need the dome if you're going to save yourself some money. But where the Jaguars, I mean, you can't host. I think they're scheduled to host one more Super Bowl over there, but it's too tiny of a venue, in the city to be hosting any kind of Super Bowls.
Well, to your point, the White Sox, I think that's one decision they need to make. Do they want to just tear it down? And as an owner, that's really tough. Are they going to put a roof on the Chicago Stadium? Do you know the new Chicago Stadium?
Yes.
Okay, so no more fog bowls.
No, no.
We
Yeah,
should have
that's
a silence.
that's
Yeah, no, they're not going to put it up there because supposedly Chicago would love to host a Super Bowl, and of course, the only way you're going to be able to do it is if you put a dome up there, because it'd be way too cold to be doing. I mean, they did that experiment obviously in New York,
Yeah.
and it should be, that's the way it was when we first started. I mean, when you went to games, just like Major League Baseball, you dealt with the elements. That's just the way it was. But because you're talking about $1 billion industry and $1 billion super boxes and all that good fun stuff, you just can't have it the way it was. So, I mean, again, good for the Bears. They've been able to do so. I'm not even going to get into Kansas City because they're also talking about a new Arrowhead Stadium too. But that's for the other guy up there next to you, Murph. That I'm pretty sure he would probably love a new venue, but we'll see. And Ryan, I don't think that I don't think there was a little bit of chatter about it, but they haven't spoken to it any recently of that. But I know apparently the NFL draft ended up being majorly successful up there in KC.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know how it compared to like other places, but from everything I'm hearing online and reading some local newspapers in Kansas City, huge hit, went over well, wasn't any sort of riffraff going on or any trouble. So I think the NFL will probably continue to just rotate city after city after city in the future, and we'll see what happens. So, but hey, look, Chiefs, don't touch Arrowhead. Leave Arrowhead alone. It's one of the mainstays. It's one of the originals that are left. Please don't do it.
And it kind of goes with the Royals ballpark, Kauffman Stadium. The two of them have sort of the same kind of design vibe going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, now here's some trivia for you, Ryan. And I'm pretty sure you should be able to guess this right off the bat. But since moving from city to city with the NFL draft, who currently still has the number one most visitors and revenue since it started?
Boy, Philadelphia.
That's right, buddy.
No kidding.
Yeah. 400,000 fans by the time it was all said and done that he talked about it, came through, stayed and visited. But yeah, still the most generated as far as fan base and money wise has been in Philly. So, and you figure like Vegas, you would have thought Vegas would have outdone it because it's Vegas. I mean, big city of lights, 109 yards, but they came in second, depending on what the final numbers come in from KC, but they've come in second. I think they talked about some 375,000 fans that end up pouring through and different activities. I guess if they're tying in the Pro Bowl to that one, but I know the Pro Bowl ended up being a major success for them as well. But yeah, Philly right now is the city to beat as far as it comes to the NFL draft. So that should be golden. I don't know. I mean, eventually when they do it out in LA, I'm pretty sure they'll do it up bigger and stuff like that.
See how he digs? I see how he digs. He digs it in me. He has to come back with that.
Of course. Well, because
we haven't even talked about the Celtics game last night, have we?
Yeah, no, exactly. That was my next one, but thanks, Murph.
Notice I said Celtics game.
Yeah. Well, because that was the other big get last night, obviously, with the Sixers and Celtics starting off. And honestly, same thing I said to my producer, there's no way in the world we're going to win game one. I just, being an honest fan, I didn't believe we're going to end up winning game one.
I didn't think they were going to win with 3 minutes left in the game.
No.
I just thought this is smoke and mirrors. This is going to blow up in their face, and they're going to lose by 9 in the last 3 minutes or something. But credit. James Harden, man. I hope Embiid's buying that guy like a nice bottle of champagne or something.
I saw things on Twitter today and on social media that they're glad that Embiid didn't play in game one because they play better as a unit without Embiid in the starting lineup. I'm sorry, but you want Embiid in there all the freaking time. Yeah. So, be careful. Now they're actually talking about him not playing in game two, which is probably going to make some people happy. Yeah. And I said last night after game one, the Celtics are probably going to have to win the next two because if they go down 2-1, I think they're done. Because then I think Embiid comes back game three. If not game three, he's definitely coming back game four.
Yeah. We were talking about this before we went on, Angel. I think it's a smart idea to not play him in game two. Yeah. Game two is no longer a game you need to have. And the only other side of this is that I do think if the Sixers can get past Boston and you can get Embiid into the next round, even at 75, 80%, I think it's it's not a magic carpet ride in the playoffs, but I think it's a lot easier ride. I felt from the beginning, and I think a lot of people did, that Boston and Milwaukee were probably the two teams that were going to be the toughest in all of the postseason for the Sixers. So I guess I'm arguing against the idea of maybe holding them out. I think they should definitely hold them out game two.
Yeah.
But, you really do need to be your best in this series. And maybe Embiid does need to play 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 if he can. And then you can rest him again in the beginning of the next round. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well,
because if you don't win this, you're done, and this is the series that you have the best chance of losing, in my opinion.
yeah, you do, and it's the same way, Murph. Like we talked about off air before we went live here, and yeah, I mean he already sat down game one. Obviously, they pull off the win again. Boston trying to do too much at the very end of it, and Ryan, you can admit this one as well because the final seconds there in the fourth. I mean, they had the game won. They literally had the game won, but they wanted to pass the ball around. Looked like they wanted to go for a three. Did the no look pass from your boy there, Tatum. So Maxey ended up being there. Even looked back like, really, I have the ball. Went
Yeah.
up for a dunk. Ended up taking it. Before that was Harden with the three. So again, trying to do too much, trying to be too fancy. Obviously, the Boston fans who love to dig into us all the time and vice versa. But it cost you the game. So now they know that tomorrow night they know where they screwed up. You would think, and you could have a complete different Sixers team come out tomorrow night as well. I mean, it's like almost like football. Any given Sunday, well, during the NBA, it's any given playoff game because you look at even now with Phoenix against Denver, who saw Denver pulling that one off? I mean, for the trades that Phoenix made to try and get Phoenix to finally get that elusive ring, I mean, it didn't happen either. So Denver's surprising a lot of folks. And then you got obviously tonight between LeBron and Steph Curry, in that rematch, and those who want to watch that game can end up watching, but not an ultra fan of the West Coast. But nevertheless, I mean, it's going to be good because obviously you have, two studs going against each other, Curry and LeBron James, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be crazy out there in California. But again, there's no rush to bring Embiid back. If you're able to steal another one, even if you tie up the series 1-1, you come back home, you're just fine. If you're able to steal game two,
Oh,
me personally, leave them out game three.
leave him out in game three. Absolutely.
Um, I didn't mind the way Boston played offensively yesterday because they played well. Where in the hell was Devon at defense without Joel Embiid in there? I mean,
Yeah.
they looked confused. They didn't know what to do. Smaller lineup, obviously, but they just didn't have an answer defensively for what Philadelphia was throwing at them. I mean, God's sakes, can somebody guard James Harden like
Yeah.
a little bit?
Yeah.
He goes off for 45. I mean, I was more baffled at the way Boston played defensively because they're a lockdown defense. They'll lock anybody down, and they just the first round series that they had against the Hawks, I think took a little bit out of them
Yeah.
because they didn't expect to go 6 games. Philadelphia blew through Brooklyn, and they were rested. But if Boston can't figure it out defensively, especially if Embiid sits game two, they're really going to be in trouble, and they have to figure that out before game two. Because if not, the same result's going to happen in game two that happened in game one.
I mean, I think one thing that probably doesn't happen is Harden gets another 45 points.
Right.
But Maxey had a pretty good game. He was got into
Yeah.
foul trouble, but he scored what, 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
And another thing about last night, Melton was shooting lights out, and you were saying about how lockdown defense Boston is. Melton was getting looks, but the question for me is, are any of these 3-point shooters going to be that hot in game two? I mean, both of those teams were incredible offensively last night. I think Boston was definitely helped in the first half by the absence of Embiid. They were, it was like a high school game. They were just going right down the chute and layup after layup after layup. But Sixers changed the defense in the second half, and you're right, Boston, couldn't score quite as easily, and they were having trouble on defense. Where they were good was inside. You were getting like Maxey had a bunch of shots blocked. The guy who was on the Sixers, now I'm drawing a blank, Horford. I thought he played a pretty good defensive game at times, especially in that second half. But they did not have it in the end, obviously. For me, I mean, if the Sixers win game two without Embiid, that is just like, that may be over at that point. But I have a hard time believing that the Sixers are going to come out and have, 3 miraculous performances like they did last time, and they're going to have to tighten up the defense in the first half, not allow Boston to just go right down the lane like they did.
No, that's true. And I mean, although it was good to see, though, because I will say, obviously, the NBA has kind of switched gears. And instead of being in the paint all the time, it seems like everybody just wants to do threes. A lot of the kids now, obviously, coming in from high school into college level, everybody's looking for threes. I don't think anyone well, I mean, just like LeBron has many records, I don't think anyone's ever going to catch Steph Curry as far as for threes. I mean, that'd be virtually impossible to do, but it can happen. But I was just glad to see that he played fundamental basketball last night. And I think for Doc Rivers, for all the naysayers that keep talking about Doc, well, Doc can't do this, Doc can't do that. Lord knows, I mean, I could have tuned into Philly radio today and hear, because you're always going to get, no matter what Doc Rivers does, you're always going to get either you're going to have people that are going to praise them and telling them how well offensively this team did last night, end up hanging in there toe to toe. I mean, they tied it up at the half. And again, you never know what's going to happen in the second half as far as on the game one. But Doc Rivers gets either lambasted or he gets praised, one of the two. So today I kind of like tuned myself out from Philly radio because I'm like, you know what? And I know it's going to happen. I don't want to hear it. I'll wait till game two, then I'll tune in to everybody else and hear what the fans are talking about. But again, because it's a fan base that you can just never make happy. You can and you can't at the same time. But that's what I love about Philadelphia, because we're tough. It's just the way we expect the best from all of our players, and that's what we do. We just look for that unity, and so we're just extremely tough when it comes to Doc Rivers and anybody else. But speaking of, I guess in a roundabout way, when it comes down to between Boston, obviously the Bruins being out now, the other Florida team takes on the Toronto team to see what's going to happen here in the NHL playoffs. And again, didn't expect what we saw from the Lightning, but again, they're early out. Toronto seems like they may have found that winning formula, as Ryan had again texted me a couple of nights ago. It seems like he's saying he's going with the underdog. But do we believe, as we're getting ready to close out the show here in a couple of minutes, do we believe that the Maple Leafs have what it takes to actually win Lord Stanley?
Uh, well, it was a big step in getting past round one because
Right.
they hadn't done it in almost 20 years. Um, they have the pieces in place. I mean, I wouldn't see why they couldn't make a deep run. Florida's battle tested from the first round. Florida might have a little bit out of them after that first round. Toronto's just sitting there with a little bit more rest. So I picked the Devils before the playoffs started. I picked the Devils and the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup. Do I think Toronto can get past Florida? I think it's going to be a knock 'em, drag 'em type series. I think this series might go seven. I think Florida has a run in them again, but I still think Toronto's going to win it in the second round, 4-3.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Toronto probably 4-2, 4-3. I probably should pick one or the other. And to your point, I think Florida, they had a great, emotional series against Boston, but they have to be tired. I think Toronto's got some momentum there. I think they'll win game one, and they will eventually win the series.
Well, the part that I love the most is obviously the Rangers being out. Not that I'm a Devils fan either, but the Rangers being eliminated once again. And it makes you want to think, is it time for a change in New York? Because another year, we all see it. Rangers are there and then eliminated. If not in the first round, the second round. So it's going to be interesting.
Flip rosters. Have them just flip rosters with the Flyers. Everything.
Yeah. Hey, Angel, real quick, I want to get Murph's opinion on the draft. Obviously, everybody's praising Howie Roseman for the second year in a row.
Yeah.
We want to see how it equates to the field during the season, because I have to remind Philadelphia fans that the Kansas City Chiefs did win the Super Bowl, and they're probably going to be primed again. Even though the AFC is loaded, were you pleasantly surprised at what Howie Roseman did again?
I mean, I think the guy's been pretty much a genius the last couple of years. People who are smarter than I and know more about it than I do have pretty consistently said that the Eagles, they think, may have had the best draft of everybody. And I think they shored up positions that they needed to shore up. The first pick they took, I remember reading about that story about that kid with the auto accident and all, and thinking how tragic that was. And I was almost surprised when I realized it was the same guy. But, what was he, 19, 20 or something, or 20?
Yeah.
I mean, kids make mistakes, and, hopefully, that's a young person's mistake that he learns from, and, he'll grow with the Eagles and be good. He looks like a good player. I thought one of the nicest things about the offseason was getting Jalen Hurts done. I think going into last season, I got to tell you, I wasn't sure he was the guy, but he, proved he is. So, hopefully they've got a good offensive line put together this year to protect him, and some of these picks they made might just help along that way. And they got a safety too, which is always a position I think is you can't get enough of that. So
No, you
That's
can't.
my general feeling about it. I think they did pretty well, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We all know
And
what happens to players who sign big contracts, though. Something's usually waiting around the corner.
I
I'm
know, I
just
know,
saying.
I know.
We'll see.
Bryce Harper's been terrible, hasn't he?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a difference between guys in big contracts and no offense to those who are married because pretty soon that's happening with me as well. But either way, it's the guys who get the big contracts and then get that big ring, and then for some reason you just watch that nosedive that happens, and it's a thing. That's why Derek Jeter said it best. He waited until after he was done with his career to decide that's going to be the next chapter of his life. So it's one of those things. So hey, we'll see. Lamar Jackson, though, let's not forget too. I mean, big payday, $185 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
I mean, when you're talking about football quarterbacks, yeah, they don't always stick, but some do. And, hopefully Jalen's one of those guys who's just going to be great for the next 5 years. They're certainly paying him to be that way, so hopefully he will be.
That's for sure. Well, listen, we'd like to thank everyone who tuned in tonight. And once again, from overseas, don't forget also Military Appreciation Month. So thank a veteran when you see him or someone who's active in the service, because thanks to those of us who had served and love to continue to serve, we're able to do what we do here in America because of guys and girls who put themselves on the front lines out there to make sure that we take care of business here at home. And for those who weren't tuned in with us, the last time Murph was on, Murph now completed year one of a 10-year contract here at Broad Street South. So
Yeah, that's right.
So year
And
one's in the book.
it's a big contract too. So I know I might just start tanking after this year.
It could be. We'll reveal the details later on. It was in the millions. But nevertheless, listen, Murph, thanks once again. I'm glad you joined us back here for the second time. I'm glad you're also enjoying retirement because it's a lot of fun. We do miss you, obviously, on the airwaves because it's completely different without having, favorite people that we love to see. Obviously, we lost Jim there for the, late evening hours, and it's different. Some of us we're old school, and you guys, when we saw you growing up as kids and then into adults and watch when you guys did, it's a different realm. So, but we can't thank you enough for what you did for 6ABC and for those of us in the Philadelphia community.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I really do. I still got a lot of yo mercs from people, and I don't mind. So if you ever see me down the ballpark or something, that's fine. I was just hanging out at the ball game with a bunch of old Channel 6 folks and some current, and I got to hang out with Karen Rogers a little bit, who took my job and is doing a great job. And so, hopefully everybody still wants to watch Channel 6, and I hope you do because my friends are still there.
That's right. Except for Ryan. Ryan likes to watch, I don't know, Dallas or Kansas City News or something else. But that's fine. Yeah. It's all right, but listen, thanks to everyone listening on Sports Radio 102.9 FM. The Game. You can hear the replay right after the show is over, also on AMP Radio and, of course, on BroadStreetSouth.com. So, with that being said, it's episode 185 with David Murphy. We will see you all come next week. And also, don't forget, Thursday night, the premiere episode over on No Filter Network, East Coast, West Coast Sports Show with myself and Joe Manuel for the No Filter Network. So, with that being said, everyone, enjoy your evening.